The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is the epitome of Luciferian moon magic because Luciferian moon magic denotes the fact that it's basically connected to the Golden Gate ritual. Because the Golden Gate in itself is a representation of consciousness that is cultivated by the gold elixir that is started from darkness, which is why you're starting to see a lot of blackouts starting to happen in increments in different cities. Because the blackout is basically the secret society speaking in a metaphysical codex. They're speaking on a different Masonic language. This is all connected to the ancient order of the mystic shrine because the golden dawn represents a golden age, and the golden age is a synthetic form of Christ that's connected to the energy of Lucifer. So Luciferian moon magic is based on the principles of, the golden dawn, which is basically the synthetic golden age, which is a cybernetic dictatorship. Luciferian moon magic that is based on sorcery. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, put the rice bowls in the chat. We finna get straight to it after this intro.
Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Man, my auntie passed last night. This is a sad life, I'm trying to get my cash right. Past bright, yeah, I'm shining like a flashlight. Trying to take off quick, might catch a fast flight. I'm mad, staying away from old friends, they all seem fake to me, hating me, cause I'm...
So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you already know what time it is. Put them rice bowls in the chat because there's a lot of stuff that's taking place. Because remember, I keep telling you guys, human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter. All this stuff is connected to the celestial alignments. You just had a solar eclipse, and then you had the lady that was connected to the movie Heroes. She passed away. Then you just had Dolly. She passed away. Then you having a Dolly hurricane, coming to the American shores or whatever when you're talking about the Atlantic Ocean. So there's a lot of stuff that's taking place at hand because when you have the collapse of water law, which is maritime law, which interfaces with the lunar doctrines of the simulation, when you have the collapse of lunar magic, that basically manipulates the bodies of water, right? So this is why you're seeing the fall of government. You're seeing a transition of government. Now you also just had the ABA are now being decentralized, right? Which is the American Bar Association, which is also connected to the British accreditation registry. Yeah, the British accreditation registry. So they're basically losing their credit because the reason I say that is because maritime law no longer has jurisdiction through the uniform commercial codes. So it's pretty much a wrap. And this is also connected to the guy who played Pennywise in the movie It and the guy who played the devil in the movie Legend. All of this is esoterically connected, and I'm going to connect all of it together with the Nepal situation that happened, with the unfortunate situation, because they said it's 47 Americans that are missing that took place with that calamity over there on the demarcation line of China in Nepal, right? Because like I said, the 47 is telling you by way of numerology that we're basically in the Christ, right? We're in the Christ energy, the 47 problem of Euclid. Donald Trump is the 47th president. All this stuff is basically connected. Now, so, I keep telling you guys, by way of symbolism, they have to tell you what the fuck is going on. And I'm just being the catalyst to show you guys what's taking place, symbolically when it comes to eschatology, which is the science of the end times. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you already know what time it is. We finna break down the esoteric and metaphysical information off the top of the head in real time. You already know what time it is. So I wanted to make some reels about some of the stuff in the video, but I'm going to bring it to the presentation first because like I said, it's one of those things where there's a lot of stuff that I talk about and I see a lot of these TikTokers and they take some of the stuff in my videos and they start putting it in their little 60 and 90-second videos or whatever. Don't think I ain't paying attention because I'm seeing y'all ass, because there's a lot of stuff like that I'll be doing as far as like the talking points or whatever. I'm gonna start bringing it into the bigger presentations. So with that being said, put the rice bowls in the chat, because like I said, we have a because as we have in a transition of government, you having a transition of everything that's connected to the Metatronic overlay. You're also going to see a shift in people who don't have their own authenticity, right? You're going to see a lot of aura farming, because a lot of people during this time period, when you have the collapse of corporations, that means that you're going to have a collapse of these job markets, right? And a lot of people, they built a synthetic purpose through their jobs. So when you have the collapse of the jobs, what happens? You're not going to feel like you have a purpose. Now you're going to try to cling on to certain people who have the true authenticity, which is the true Christ, right? That's why it's imperative for the chosen ones. You must protect your energy during this time period, because what is the golden age? The golden age is where a human becomes God, right? And it happens by way of the mindset. So that's why I said you got to take your power back. So I'm gonna get the screen share going. That's the only way you're gonna last through the simulation, is by way of authenticity. So when you get into the esoterics of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is basically the epitome of Luciferian moon magic. Luciferian moon magic denotes the fact that we live in a simulation, because, like I said, it operates by way of dualism. So dualism in itself can be manipulated when you have solar transmission. Because I keep telling you guys that the great majority of these secret societies understand these celestial alignments and these astrological alignments. So that's how they're able to play semantics when it comes to these corporations and all these job markets and things of that nature. Because one thing you gotta understand is that the moon is connected to the material plane, and the material plane is connected to the financial and the economic system. So when you have a shift in the planetary bodies, that shifts the weather, and when you have when the weather shifts, that basically manipulates the great majority as far as like the financial markets, because that's where calamity must ensue, right? Because you can make a lot of money based on tragedy. So that's because you got to understand that places like FEMA and all these other agencies, they understand astrological alignments. So that's why they base their corporations and their agencies based connected to secret societies like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in itself is basically the unification of the Masonic lodges, which is basically the epitome of Mossad deception. So Luciferian moon magic is connected to Zionism and the Third Reich. So that's what you got to understand. This is all nothing but Masonic coding, because all the blackouts that you see taking place on the planet right now in all these different states or whatever, that is basically the secret society speaking in code, right? Because the blackout basically represents a transition. Now, some claim that Pan is the universal agent known as phosphorus that gives light and life to the world, the great principle of vegetable and animal life. If Pan phosphorus, when you get into the periodic elements or whatever, this would be tied into Pan, who was Lucifer. In Greek mythology, the Golden Dawn party has called the great Pan the Aryan Lucifer. So the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, when Donald Trump is talking about this golden age, the golden age is basically nothing but Luciferian moon magic that is based on technocratic sorcery to basically stagnate the crown, which is Kether. When you get into the Kabbalah systems, right? That's what it's all about. It's nothing but inverted magic, because they know that we're headed to the golden age, because this is why you're looking at, the great majority of all these ecological crises, such as what took place in Nepal, when you're talking about that water wave. All this stuff is happening because you're in the last sun cycle. That's why the things is basically going to be ramping up, because like I said, the synthetic golden age has to mirror the timeline of the true light, which is the sun, right? That is interfacing with the North Star Polaris, which is also the epitome of the true light. Now, on August 17th of 2026, in Katniss, Sicily, Saint Agatha's skull was placed into the ornate regalia bust in the ceremonial crown during the celebrations for the 900th anniversary of the return of her relics to Catania. The Cardinal Petro Parlanio act as a papal legate participated in the ceremony. So what you see taking place right now, this is basically a resurrection of consciousness. But one thing you got to understand is that this is basically the epitome of the false light, because this entity of Saint Agatha, she basically represents the false light, which is basically Lucifer, which is also equated to the Statue of Liberty, right? So the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is based on Luciferian moon magic. Everybody knows that the Statue of Liberty is Lucifer when you look at the ontological artifacts and the history behind it. Now, when you're looking at this is basically talking about the the process of a technocratic government that is based on a synthetic golden age, right? So they're basically mimicking our resurrection in real time. That's what it's basically representing. They're telling you that Christ is here, but they're putting the skull, which represents Golgotha, which is Argartha. We're going to get into that as we get through the transmission, right? So I'm going to show you the video of what it basically symbolizes, right? Because this entity of Saint Agatha, she basically represents Argartha. Argartha is Golgotha, and Golgotha is a place of the skull, which is the black dot, and the black dot is the pineal gland where you resurrect that true light. So this is basically the false representation when you get into the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is a fictitious synthetic form of a golden age that's coming from the Trump administration, right? That's what you got to understand. That's why you see in all the blackouts. The blackouts are symbolic to the activation of the black dot, right? Crown chakra activation. Because in order to step into the gold light, you got to be stepping in, you got to step into the darkness first. But I'm going to show you this first before we get into the transmission. Before we get through it, I'm going to show you this video. I know y'all seen the video already on social media, but we finna get straight to it. Put those rice bowls in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. So, all right, here we go. Now, what you see taking place is basically a symbolic form of a restoration of consciousness, right? Because, like I said, Golgotha is the place of the skull. That's why I keep telling y'all that God is the highest extension of the mind, which uses elements and matter to express itself. That's how you become God, by way of mental expression, right? So this is basically talking about, they're telling you in a symbolic form that the Christ energy is here on the planet. Because ever since we got through the Lionsgate portal, which is basically a representation of the 888 or 88, because the 88 is also connected to the Golden Dawn, and Trump, when you break down the gematria of his name, represents 88. And 88 is connected to the 88 star constellations and the 88 keys on the piano. So that means that you have to be in tune in frequency in order to reap the benefits of the Christ that's being restored on the planet by way of divine feminine energy, right? That's what you must understand in real time. So this is basically telling you in real time that the Christ is here. But this is basically their ritual. This is Luciferian moon magic, right? Because they're doing this ritual that's connected to all the lunar doctrines when you're talking about Christianity and Catholicism and Judaism and Islam, right? These are all basically forms of lunar forms of magic, lunar doctrines. Now, at the end, towards the end, see, he blesses it because a pope, that now that's not a pope, but that's a cardinal. Because remember, when you get into the Vatican Church, you have papals, you got cardinals, but what is a cardinal actually talking about symbolically when you go to the movie Disclosure Day? It's actually talking about a restoration of consciousness once you're able to interface with nature through the ancestors, right? So that's why they got a fake ass cardinal that is man-made, that's coming from religion, trying to restore the consciousness of divine feminine energy through Lucifer. So they're giving you the false light, but they're still telling you what time it is on the planet at the same time, right? Look at that. See, now they put the crown because, like I said, the crown, when you get into the Kabbalah systems, the crown is a representation of Kether, crown chakra activation, right? This is all connected to Greenland, which is why Donald Trump wants Greenland, because Greenland is the crown chakra of planet Earth because it represents unity consciousness, because they want to build a technocratic system in that geographical area first. That's why they want to build a great majority of these smart cities when it comes to locking down the codons and the DNA of planet Earth to stop this great awakening that's coming from the chosen ones, right? I talk about it in my book. So now, so like I said, we're going to get back to the transmission. Put the rice bowls in the chat. So now, we're going to get back to get my screen share going. Now, we back. So St. Agatha's, the restoration process of consciousness is basically giving Lucifer of the ancient or Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn that's connected to all these secret societies. Like I said, they're speaking in a form of, Masonic codex, right? They're speaking in coding, right? So in order to cultivate the Golden Age, you got to step into the darkness first. So that's why, when you get into the ancient Kemetic spirituality, it actually talks about Apep or Apophis. It talks about Apophis in theological context in the Bible. So Apep is Apophis, and that's where human becomes God in the Golden Age by way of the resurrection of consciousness, which is why you see the snake is actually showing you the symbolic energy of the numerical components of 88 or triple eight, right? Because the 88 or triple eight or double eight represents the unification of the heart and the mind, which is the pi equation. So that's why in the Darko movie, the killer rabbit is a symbol, symbolizes the constellation of Lepus, which is next to the big dog star Sirius. Tells Donnie Darko the world is ending in 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, 12 seconds. And then you take 28 plus 6 plus 42 plus 12, you get 88. So 88 is basically talking about the resurrection of consciousness. So when you're talking about the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn, that is symbolic to the number 88. They're telling you the Christ is here, but the Trump administration, they're trying to stagnate the Christ energy with a synthetic golden age, with a technocratic government. That's what they're doing, right? Speaking of Donald Trump has been called the Orange Clown. Now, this is all connected to the guy who played the It, who just passed away, the clown energy, because it's connected to the ancient order of the Mystic Shrine, and the Shriners in itself is connected to the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn. It's connected to all these forms of secret societies that's over here on the left when you look at this diagram, which is the European esoteric Masonic hierarchical construct, right? So Donald Trump also equals Trump equals 88. And you got 88 star constellations. You got 88 keys on a piano. And then this ties to Aleister Crowley's Golden Dawn. Donald Trump is the Gold Dawn, or the Orange Clown. The 7 trumpets are sound before the apocalypse. People refer to Trump as the last Trump. There is 88 modern constellations and 88 keys on the piano. And a chessboard has an 8x8 grid. And then when you take 8 times 8, you get 64, and 64 is the number of the activation of codons when you're talking about the neuroendocrine transducer, which makes you become the Christ, because the 64 is also symbolic to the iotrophic vector matrix tetrahedron simulation grid system, right? It's basically keeping you boxed in because the number 64 is connected to the Saturn moon matrix, which keeps you interconnected to a time cube, because Saturn is basically the holographic computer that interfaces with the communications interfacing module, which is basically the moon, which is a satellite. So those virtual instruments in itself has the ability to manipulate time by keeping you boxed inside the 64. So that's why when you activate the 88, the Christ energy, Apophis, human becomes God in the Golden Age. That's when you break outside the box, right? Because 8 times 8 equals 64. When you break outside the box, you become the Christ. That's why the guy was putting the motherfucking skull inside Saint Agatha's head because it represents the restoration process of heaven. So that's why when you go to Revelation chapter 21, verse 1, it says a new heaven and a new earth. It is not talking about you stepping through a fucking portal. It's actually talking about a mental portal. You got to go through heaven here first mentally before you step into physical heaven, right? Because everything takes place with the mind first when you're talking about a form of materialization. So when you break outside the box, when you're talking about the suprachiasmatic nucleus, because like I said, 8 times 8 equals 64. So when you activate the 88, where human becomes God in the golden age, Apophis, Apep, you break outside the box, right? Breaking outside the crucifix is basically you breaking outside the marginalization of the Metatronic overlay of what I call the simulation. You're breaking out of the confines. You're no longer boxed in. That's why I keep telling you, when you think outside the box, you think outside religion, you think outside your fucking job, you become the golden dime. But the Trump administration, they're trying to mimic the energy by way of symbolism in their secret societies. They're telling you what time it is on the planet, but you got to think, right? Because this is all connected to GameCube. GameCube, which represents a crucifix, and this crucifix is symbolic to the 64 tetrahedron matrix system. That's why in the year of 1988, Donald Trump, it says in his publication that he lost his mind because the mind is activated during the time of the 88, because the 88 is the unification of the heart and the mind, right? Because the 8 represents on the periodic table of elements, it represents hydrogen. So that's why the Christ energy is here, because the neutrinos is transmuting the atmosphere into a hydrogen-based planet, which basically manipulates oxidation. So that's why I said human becomes God in the golden age, because when you manipulate oxidation, you cannot die because that coats the cells, right? And it activates the T cells. Because one thing you got to understand about the electrical transmission of the neutrinos, once they interface with the T cells in the body, that basically stimulates, the police officers of the biological systems of your body. You literally become God, right? It becomes a protection just by way of the activation of the atmosphere. So hydrogen is connected to the number 8, and the number 8 by way of the activation of the atmosphere is where you're going to tap into your powers, because the electrical transmission of a hydrogen-based atmosphere is an omnicron-based state. Omnicron is a form of ether. So you have an etheric atmosphere which stimulates the hippocampus layer of the brain. This is why I keep telling you that, the mind is God. This is all connected to the brain, right? You got to break outside the box. This is why they're showing you in the ritual the restoration of the skull, right? The restoration of the skull. That's what you must understand. Because, those electrical transmissions of the hydrogen-based atmosphere is what stimulates the hippocampus layer of the brain, and it basically unlocks the Bathory gland. And the Bathory gland is where you get your Christ abilities from once you break outside the box, right? So I don't care what you say. If you confine yourself to a fucking religion or a westernized Eurocentric ideology, you're pretty much boxed in. Anything that you follow of this system, you are boxed in, right? So they're telling you by way of the symbolism in this that the unity consciousness is breaking out of the box, right? So the golden dawn is basically mimicking the energy of the true golden age during the time of the sun cycle. So this is why you see so much 88 that's connected to Donald Trump, and this is why you have 88 modern star constellations, why you have 88 keys on the piano, and why you have an 8x8 chessboard. And 8 times 8 equals 64, and 64 is the completion code of the DNA codons to activate the Christ body, right? All this is esoterically connected, because 64 is the first whole number that is both a perfect number and a square cube, right? And plus, the number 88 is the only number that can break outside the time barrier when you're talking about the radiation belt, which is connected to the silver key, which is the lunar light lock. So you got to be operating on the octave vibration of 88 in order to break the time dilation of the simulation. You can only break time when you have the unification of the heart and the mind. So when you're talking about the laws of Mayat, The laws of Ma'at is really the number 88. 8 on one hand, 8 on the other hand. That's what it's basically talking about. But that unification in itself is how you break time, which creates time dilation. Now, going back to this, like I said, this is all talking about, this is all symbolism. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is where these secret societies propagate what's taking place in a form of theological context. They're telling you what time it is by way of symbolism because they know that they don't have access to the higher realms. So they have to mimic the energy by way of symbolism and rituals. So when you're looking at this, this is the synthetic form. This is the restoration of the false light of Lucifer, of Saint Agatha. Now you see the word Agatha at the top. Agatha is equated to Argartha. Argartha is a legendary kingdom said exists deep inside. So Golgotha is a place inside the skull. So Jesus was crucified between two thieves on Golgotha, known as the place of the skull, which is why you got the motherfucking crucifix right here. You're breaking outside the box. Well, you got the brain right here, right? They're telling you what time it is. You just got to read the room. So Argartha, Golgotha, a place of the skull, is the same thing as the ritual that took place in Sicily, Saint Agatha, where she was crowned. But this is Lucifer right here, right? You got to understand that. Everything that's coming from the Golden Dawn is Luciferian moon magic, right? The false light. And then it even tells you when you get into theological context, it shows you how Christ, it says, shows you a solar eclipse in the background. And then it says Golgotha, and it shows you a skull at the bottom, right? You can't make this up, ladies and gentlemen. They're telling you what time it is. Because like I said, the place of the skull is actually talking about the black dot. The black dot is how you create these blackouts. So by way of the symbolism that's taking place, in these secret societies or whatever, the great majority of these blackouts that took place like in Gary, Indiana, and different places in Florida and Texas and things of that nature, this is nothing but, the secret societies speaking to each other in Masonic coding. They're just speaking to each other in secret codex. So America's biggest utility sees blackouts ahead. So now this is coming from one of the top, energy general organizations. It says that warns of the United States could face a widespread blackout by 2027, which is the year of the goat. And the year of the goat is 11 in an 11 year, and an 11 year represents a separation. So that's also the year of the great separation, because the year of the goat is also during the time of initiation. So 2027, arguing that utilities need permission to build a new power plant, investment has failed to keep pace with the future demand. And then it tells you right here, the United States-Canada trade war threatens electrical imports prices. So Canada, they're threatening to shut off our electricity as well. And then it tells you right here, you just had this today, at least 95 people killed and hundreds in foreign tourists missing after a massive flash flood hits Nepal, China border. So you got that going on. And then you got this in the CNN. It says hundreds missing, and many feared dead after massive flash flood hits Nepal, China border. And then at the bottom right here, it says 47 Americans. Remember, I'm telling you, they're telling you the Christ energy is here. The 47, when you get into the sacred geometry of Freemasonic, numerology and things of that nature, the 47 represents the 47 prime of Euclid. Man, woman, and child, which is mind, body, and spirit. And mind, body, and spirit is Isis, Osiris, and Horus, or Isis, Ra-El. So the 47 is actually talking about the Christ. So they're telling you by way of symbolism in the numbers and by way of calamity, they're telling you what's taking place on the planet. And Donald Trump is the 47th president. So they tell you what's taking place, by way of numerology. So then when you look at this, it says experts say a massive glacier collapse caused the Nepal disaster. Now, this is all connected. I keep telling y'all, everything is connected, because you cannot, take nothing off the table when it comes to all these industries, right? Because, Drake, he came out with an album called what? Iceman. Drake is also really good friends with who? French Montana. French Montana is best friends with who? Max B. Max B is called what? The Wave. The wave happens when you have the melting of the ice. Iceman represents the collapse of the artificial system. So when you have the collapse of the artificial system by way of the manipulation of the moon, because like I said, human consciousness manipulates physical matter. When you activate your consciousness, you basically manipulates the time dilation that's connected to Saturn and the moon, right? You manipulate that whole construct. So, like I said, and then like I said, French Montana and Max B, he got out of prison on 11/9, which is a mirror flip for 9/11, and he was 47 years old when he was released, which is connected to 47 Americans being released and Donald Trump being the 47th president. So all this, numerically checks out. So the glacier is connected to Iceman. So for those who live on the shorelines, it's imperative that I don't use my page for scare tactics or whatever, but for those who've been following me and for those who've been taking, he's fear mongering, for those who've been listening, there was a lady who said something on Brother Rich's channel. She said that, I think she had a generator. I think she's like one of the only people that, in her neighborhood who had a generator. And the only reason she had that, she said, because she listens to me. But so for some reason, people think when I'm trying to prepare y'all for something, y'all think that I'm basically trying to fearmonger. No, I'm just trying to put you up on game. So I'm going to show you this video of a naval intelligence officer talking about people you need to move off the shorelines, right? So I'm going to play this video. Hold on for a second. Play this video for you guys.
And I had warned people to stay away from.
So now I need you to understand something. There's a motherfucking difference between putting people up on game and scare tactics and fear mongering, right? Because now it's going to be one of those things where once people, they build a platform. And when I understand when it comes to certain celebrities, because y'all be expecting certain people to speak about certain things, and when they don't speak about them, all of a sudden they fake and things of that nature. And then when they do speak about it, all they're fear mongering. Now, if I don't say nothing about it and not use my platform to edify people about what's taking place on the planet, now I'll be in the wrong, and people be like, "Well, brother, he didn't even be there, didn't say nothing about what was going to happen." He an agent because he knew and he didn't say nothing. Now, if I don't say nothing, I'm an agent. So that's what I'm saying. There's a difference between putting people up on game and fear mongering, right? Like I said, if you scared, take your ass right back to church, because there's a reason why you incarnated during this timeline. There's no reason to be scared. You should be grateful for the calamity. You should be great. Everybody talking about the collapse. You want everything to collapse, but when everything happens, you scared. Everybody talking about, "Oh, I can't wait till all this shit end." What requires for everything to end? That means that everything has to go through a crisis, right? That means that you have to have a beautiful destruction, right? Because the same thing that created everything in existence, which is ether, has the ability to cause destruction. That's what ether is. It operates on two different intervals, creation and destruction, right? But now we're going through the cosmic pendulum. What goes around comes right back around, right? Energy expands and returns to itself. So you should be happy. Oh, I don't understand that. That's why, even with Christians or whatever, remember like, "Oh, I'm ready for Christ to come back." No, you're not ready, because if Jesus was to come back, he's not going to come back happy and with balloons and cake and all this other shit. No, he's going to come back in calamity, and you're going to try to kill him. So like I said, people are not psychologically ready for what is to come. Y'all speaking about some shit, y'all talking about y'all ready for it, and then when it actually happens, y'all act like y'all scared.
And I had warned people to stay away from coastlines and the Mississippi River, and said that you should migrate toward the center of the country, or at least away from the coastline. So when people ask about safe areas in the United States, look, anywhere that has high elevation or that's away from the coastline is always going to be a plus. The only thing you have to be careful of is the flat plains, anything that has flat plain land. There's a lot of flat plain land in Iowa, Missouri, and in certain places in the Midwest that you do have to be careful for. But anything with higher elevation is going to be a huge plus. A lot of people are just not in the position to move, nor can they move.
And mind you, this is a naval intelligence officer who's putting you up on game about what's taking place. This is not fear mongering. This is telling you to get your ducks in a row, cross your motherfucking T's and dot your I's in case something happens.
They don't have the money, the finances, they have kids in school. Listen, I understand all that. But I'm just letting you know, by 2027, if you can, get away from the coastline. Okay, the next question.
Hear what he said, by 2027. And I also, in this presentation, I have a document that basically specifies, what's going to be taking place as far as like the interval time, the duration period of where a crisis is going to happen. I'm going to show you the timestamp. So, just with me seeing this in a government document, I would say, whatever you need to move by this date. And I'm going to just show you because it's actually time stamped. I got it screenshotted, and I'm going to show it in the transmission as we get through the presentation after this video.
Question, and this kind of coincides with the first question. When will this happen? Look, I don't have a crystal ball, and nor do I claim to be God. I'm only going to go by documents that I've seen that I shouldn't be sharing with you, but anyway, documents that I've seen that coincide with this, okay? And this is 100% fact. When I say when this will happen, short answer, by 2027. It could be sooner. It could be next month. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. But by 2027, from the documents that I read and from what I've seen.
And that's what I'm saying? And let's just say you ain't got enough money to move. This is the time you need to get in your bag and and get your resources together. Don't be so spiritual to where you negate reality. If you got to get an extra job, go get that extra job. Because what I tell people, sometimes you got to use the matrix in order to get out. So don't be so ignorant to the point where you negate reality and you think you're so spiritual and you don't want to work a job. No, go get them reptilian coins for a little bit. Get that money up and use it as a catalyst for your next journey. You know what I'm saying? You got to use everything as a stepping stool in a simulation.
There was a agenda here to change things around as far as what the United States is going to look like. Okay, next question. I need my glasses again. This is a great question, by the way. Whoever sent me this. What do you know about the food supply? Great question. Matter of fact, that should be one of the number one concerns on your mind, is what you put in your body. So what do I know about the food system or food supply? Well, number one, it's full of poison. Number two, okay. So safe areas in the United States. Well, people say, well, why would people ask about safe areas? What is this about? Just in case you didn't see my other video.
So we have a lot of safe zones in the Midwest. So, and it's also connected to the Agenda for 2030 also. You got to understand that, right? Because the Agenda for 2030 is basically the New World Order with a Gucci belt on. That's all it is. The Agenda for 2030 is nothing but the New World Order with a Gucci belt on. That's all it is. It's nothing but with a Gucci belt on and a Maybach. They're trying to dress it up. They want to make it seem like it's basically something progressive, because you got all this artificial intelligence technology and things of that nature, right? So we're going to get right back to the transmission. And then I'm going to show you another video. Because I got, another video that coincides with the great majority of what I'm talking about. And get the likes up, because we want to push, certain videos in the algorithm, because there's a lot of people, especially when it comes to the so-called Black community, we're very naive when it comes to esoteric information, and we don't understand the mechanics of the symbolism. So that's why, I want to be that, bridge to help people understand symbolism, because that's when, other people is going to be able to break shit down for themselves and be able to be the catalyst for their village and for their tribe and for their household. So prepare, because you know what I'm saying, this is not only, you know, something that's going to be taking place in Nepal. This is going to be happening in many different places, right? Because they want to set up their technocratic system, a technocratic system that's based on cybernetic sorcery, which is Luciferian moon magic, that's based on the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a synthetic golden age created by the Trump administration to basically stop you from becoming a Christ. Woo, that tea good. So now you got all this going on. It says the next tropical storm will share Dolly's name, right? She just passed away. And then, you know, I was gonna, you know, do some touching on this situation, but I don't really care to talk about celebrities, you know, too much. But I know that she has a lot of connections to the Epstein files, and she was also connected to the Church of Satan with Anton LaVey, and she's also connected to many different people that's connected to the Rosicrucian Order, which is the Order of the Flower. So she's connected to like secret societies and things of that nature. So, you know, pretty much it's kind of funny that they put her on Time Magazine, because a lot of times when you join these secret societies, you were chosen to be the sacrifice. So your time was up. May she rest in peace. So you got all this stuff taking place. Physicist talks about the end of the world prediction sets doomsday for this year, right? Because remember, based on the 80-year theory, when you're talking about the seculum of a cycle, everything has a transitional period. Every 80 years, there's a crisis that takes place on American soil, right? Every 80 years. And when you go back from 80 years ago, you will look up what happened 80 years all the way up from now, 80 years back, and you will see what happened in America. And then it tells you right here, blood, red moon sparks, Armageddon fears as biblical prophecy appears to unfold, right? Because one thing you got to understand about a red moon is also symbolic to a timestamp. It's a timestamp. And then the world inches towards a catastrophic climate events. Bigger shocks are on the way. So now, this is where we get into the FEMA. Now, I went on FEMA. Some told me to go on FEMA's website, because one thing you got to understand about these flock cameras, flock has a lot of representation that's coming from FEMA, because FEMA has the continuity of government. So they're connected to the Trump administration, which is why I keep telling you guys that Trump is playing both sides. He's not, yes, he's basically dismantling the deep state shadow government, but he's also working with the deep state shadow government at the same time, if that makes sense. There's a reason why he's a Gemini, right? He's playing both sides. So FEMA, through the continuity of government, is connected to the Trump administration. And then it tells you right here what's going to be taking place in California. So it tells you that California Scarface Fire, and then it has a publication for it. Speaking of, so it's pretty much saying that it's premeditated, and they got it, you know, documented for 2028. Then on FEMA's website right here, because like I said, by way of the continuity of government, and with Donald Trump having qualified immunity, and him working with FEMA, that's how he's going to create this synthetic golden age. It's through the disasters and everything that's connected to FEMA, because it's going to be like a transition. So he's going to give you, you know, the illusion of progress through FEMA to basically, you know, bring about this golden age through the Trump administration. So it tells you right here in the publication title, Crisis Response and Disaster Resilience 2030, Forging a Strategic Age of Uncertainty. So they're telling you that something's going to happen by 2030. And then it tells you right here in another part of the publication on FEMA, application deadlines varies. States, tribes, or territories must have received a flood-related emergency or a major disaster declaration between June 1st of 2025 and May 31st of 2027. Now, this is what I was talking about. Now, this is on FEMA's website. If you was like, hey, be there, when you think I should move by this time. Okay, I'm just using, you know, based on what I see. If I'm going to put a timestamp on something, and this is coming from, You know, FEMA, and like I said, they got to use these agencies, you know, to basically tell you the truth in many different forms, right? I would say move if you need to move inward, inland, or whatever off the coastlines. I say by 2000 May 31st of 2027, right? And you see tribes or territories, right? This is why it's important for people to tap into their indigenous culture, because you know those are the people that's going to be able to make it to the hereafter, because you know it's kind of like the same concept of the movie Greenland. And on the movie Greenland, it was only the builders or the people who had careers, aka Freemasons, who got, you know, the text message to basically, you know, get clearance and for safety and things of that nature. So this is why it's imperative for you to tribe. You should not call yourself Black, African American, right? Connect with your indigenous tribes, because by way of the restoration of the matriarch and the crumbling of the crown of England, they know that everything has to go back into the indigenous tribes, because we are the ones who control those territories, right? So this is why I'm saying they telling you in real time. They're telling you to tribe up. They're telling you to tribe up. So the declaration between June 1st, a major disaster declaration between June 1st, 2025, May 31st, 2027, right? Now, before we get to that, I'm going to show you another video. And make sure y'all get the likes up. Make sure y'all get the likes up, ladies and gentlemen.
Developing beneath the surface of the tropical Pacific, which has the power to reshape weather across the globe. It is a natural climate pattern called El Nino.
The trade winds that normally blow from east to west, they weaken, they reverse. That allows very, very warm water to move and pool on the eastern side of the Pacific, and that can have really big impacts on weather patterns.
So for those who don't understand what El Nino weather is, El Nino weather, metaphysically speaking, means that you have the spiritual waters from the east collaborating with the waters from the west in the form of conflagration in the Bible, which is actually the representation of the great purification. So this is why you're seeing so much calamity, because when you have a purification of, you know, the planetary systems and the purification of government, that means that you have to have a shift in the transition. So that's why everything that's connected to water law, which is the corporations that interfaces with, you know, lunar magic and the moon and things of that nature, all these things basically have to collapse, right? So the El Nino non-weather is basically non-ether activation collapsing the material plane in real time.
Around the world.
Climate scientists are sounding the alarm about this year's El Nino. They say the weather phenomenon, which starts in the Pacific Ocean, could be the most severe in...
Now they're telling you, when you look at the word El Nino, you got El. What is an El? A Elohim. What is a Nino? A Nino is a 9. So that means that they're telling you that God 9, and God 9 is actually talking about the mind being God. Human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter. I keep telling you guys that. So El Nino is basically telling you that the purification is taking place by the Elohim.
Living memory. The results could be record-breaking global temperatures in 2027 and natural disasters the likes of which the world hasn't seen.
Because the year of 2027 is the year of the goat. And the year of the goat is the year of the great separation. And why are people going to be separated? They're going to be separated because you're going to have people, when you're talking about the splitting of timelines, this is what I'm talking about. You're not going to say, when I'm saying is that you're going to see people left behind, it's not going to, it's metaphorical. So when you're going to have people that's going to be connected to the fifth dimension, meaning that they're going to be tapped into the magnetosphere by way of the mind. So those who have a high vibrational frequency, you're going to be in the fifth dimension mentally, meaning that you're not going to be able to see some certain people. You're not going to see some of these people who are stuck in religion. You're going to be in the same town or whatever, but you're not going to be able to interface with these individuals because of the energy, they're not going to be able to coexist. Those bandwidths cannot coexist during that time period, because 2027 is actually the time period where we reach solar cycle 25, it reaches its solar maximum in 2027, right? So the year of 2027 in itself is the year of the GOAT. And I'm gonna break this down a little more intrinsically as we get through this video when I'm talking about the year of the GOAT, because all of it is basically esoteric Freemasonic symbolism, right? Talking about you.
In a century.
But before that, we got to the bad news today, didn't we? That our cost of living is on the up again because of higher energy bills. But another big factor in the rising cost of our weekly shop is a huge climate system on the other side of the world. It is called El Nino. And while it can have a devastating effect on nearby countries, it is unlikely to have a direct effect on the weather here. But it may well have a huge bearing on the price of essential goods. And scientists are predicting this year's super El Nino could be the biggest yet.
The El Nino weather phenomenon can fan the flames of already extreme weather. Australia and Canada more prone to wildfires. Deadly floods like these in Libya taking thousands of lives and millions of homes, whilst areas like southern Africa can be ravaged by drought. This year's event, triggered by heating in the Pacific 6,000 miles away, is being described as a
Godzilla
El Nino.
We're going to be experiencing weather that we've never seen before.
As well as the human cost, there's an economic impact too. And everything from your shampoo to your phone.
Like I said, I keep telling y'all, El Nino is when you have, neutrinos collapsing the simulation. So when you collapse the simulation, you're collapsing the time barrier in between Saturn and the moon. So when you manipulate everything that's connected to the Saturn moon matrix, that manipulates the weather, and the weather in itself is what manipulates water law, because water in itself is connected to the moon. The moon is what controls the tides of the planet, right? So when you see the collapse of maritime law, you're basically talking about the fall of patriarchy. Moonfall is a symbology of the fall of patriarchy, right? So that's why you're going to see a shift when it comes to the economics in the financial standpoint, because that's where you get the word money from. When you look at the word money or monetary or monopoly, M-O-N, moon day, money. You go to work on Monday. That's when you start your day to make money. So that all that stuff is connected to the moon. And the moon is what controls the weather in the simulation in the bodies of water. So that's why I'm saying the neutrinos that's coming from El Nino is manipulating this whole system. It is basically fracking and glitching the simulation, right?
Even your trainers could all be affected by it. So how worried should we be? When might this hit? And how soon until we have to pay for extreme weather?
And if you have to put it into context for us, I mean, how would you describe?
Maritime law is basically a caste system. It's a caste system that is built on uniform commercial codes that is also connected to the 1724 Black Christian codes that creates color law. And maritime law works through corporations, and a lot of these corporations work through the forms of many different forms of the religion and things of that nature, because that's why you got ecclesiastical law, and ecclesiastical law is connected to canon laws, and the canon laws is what creates the caste system of democracy, which is basically fraud. It's corporate fraud, right? Which is why, the 14th Amendment, is a fraudulent contract. It never been ratified. So maritime law is what propagates a synthetic government, a demonstrative government, which is why you got democracy. Democracy is nothing but a demo system of democracy, which is based on Canaanite culture, because Canaanites have to mimic the energy of the indigenous people because they're not organic to the land. So they have to create systems of control on top of the land. That's what maritime law is, ladies and gentlemen.
What makes this El Nino different from the strong events that we've seen before?
Yeah, it's just supercharged. So there's more heat in that part of the Pacific. Therefore, it has some really extreme local events. It'll lead to flooding, particularly the eastern side of South America, droughts across the western side of the Pacific, so Australia. Again, we're going to see those stories of wildfires coming out. We saw that with the last El Nino event in Australia, and they're going to be even more severe because of this event, because it's a much more extreme event. And right around the world, we'll see temperatures rising. So we're pretty much guaranteed 2027 will be the hottest year on record. We can say that now before we...
You heard what she said. 2027 is going to be the hottest year on record. So for those who got that deep state dosage from the deep state shadow government, you're going to be cooked from the inside out, right? And it's going to manipulate the neurochemical sensors in the body. Because one thing you got to understand is that those nanometals inside your body is basically going to manipulate your nervous system. It's going to heat you up, literally. And this is where you're going to get spontaneous combustion. This is where you're going to get a lot more people falling out, right? So for those of you, this is the time you need to lock in, right? Because 2027 is going to be one hell of a ride. Because like I said, 2027 is the year of the GOAT, and the year of the GOAT is the year of initiation in Freemasonic symbology.
We've got into the year because of this El Nino event. It's just going to put so much extra heat and energy into the atmosphere. Pretty much guaranteed that now.
That's why you got to understand that astrophysics basically should be taught along with, biology. You got to understand that astrophysics and biology go hand in hand, because when it comes down to everything that's taking place or whatever, when you have the collapse of a synthetic system, that means that you're going to have a collapse of a synthetic people, right? That's why you have this. This is the main reason why when it comes to so-called black people, the reason why you have so many problems is because you are the original people living in a synthetic system. You the original motherfucker living in a synthetic system. That's why everything is so hard for you here, right? So that's why you should be glad that everything is collapsing. Yeah. Hell yeah, I want another earthquake. Bring some more earthquakes. I hope we have another volcanic eruption. You know what I'm saying? It should get to that point. Because the very thing that, that's creating the destruction is what created you. You are a part of that destruction. So that means that you're going to be protected. If you really believe that you chosen, right? There's nothing to be afraid about. You know what I'm saying? Even if you're living in California or on the coastlines and things of that nature, let's just say that you don't have the ability to move nowhere. But if you chosen, you always going to be protected, right? It's an energy signature that has to be taken to the hereafter. That's why you're looking at the purging of the lands. You're looking at the purging of a system. You're looking at the purging of a certain ideology, and you're looking at the purging of a certain demographic. So everything that was basically cancerous to the planet has to go away. It's over for them, right? But if you've chosen and you operate from a high vibrational frequency, those geometric energy fields around the body is going to create that protection. That means that the motherfucking universe and source can see you, right? So you're going to be protected. You might be on a vacation somewhere on a mountain, and a motherfucking earthquake might happen, and you might be protected. It's not because right place at the right time. No, it's your energy is what's going to keep you protected, right? Because one thing you got to understand when it comes to the quantum world, it sees energy. It don't see what skin color you are. It sees the energy you're vibrating on. If you're vibrating on the lower chakra systems, you're not going to make it. If you're vibrating on the higher chakra systems, you're going to make it. It's that simple.
Drought and more flooding. This year's El Nino will fuel weather extremes, and meteorologists are reaching for their strongest superlatives. The UK Met Office says the weather phenomenon will be unprecedented and the strongest in 100 years. El Nino is a natural phenomenon that sets in when winds that typically blow from east to west temporarily ease. That allows warm water, which is normally pushed to the western Pacific, to spread eastwards. Scientists typically declare an El Niño when sea surface temperatures in a key area of the Pacific are 0.5 degrees above average. By July this year, we were already at 2 degrees. The latest forecasts from the Met Office suggest that warming could exceed 3 degrees later this year. Others have even projected the water temperature to reach 4 degrees above average. If that happens, it could be the El Niño of the millennium. The hotter surface temperature in the Pacific has consequences for the weather across the world. Less rain in the orange areas and more rain in the blue ones. The results: severe drought, wildfires and extreme flooding. In the past, agricultural failure and disruptions in crop yields have caused spikes in food prices and threatened food security for millions. If the numbers hold true, this El Niño...
See, that's why, like I said, FEMA been telling you, it said in that publication, talking about tribes. So that means that you need a tribe up, because you cannot shift the culture until you tap into agriculture. We got to start growing our food, right? Because like I said, you know, it's only a matter of time before your city goes through the same shit that Gary, Indiana went through. So like I said, you got to be prepared for stuff like this. Have the fresh food and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? You see all the stuff that they showing you in Costco, the big gallon jugs of water and all this, you know, preparedness for when the world is ending. They not doing that shit for no reason. They're telling you. That's why I keep telling people, read the room, right? But everybody think everything is a conspiracy. Everybody think everything is fear-mongering. Nah, we just trying to put you up on game. You know what I'm saying?
Will have bigger consequences than ever before.
The Met Office calling this El Niño potentially unprecedented. How worried should we be?
Yeah, so it's been named a super El Nino, and rightly so, as you showed from those clips. The temperature above average is going to peak at above 3 degrees above average, maybe even 4 degrees above average. Some of our centres are quoting that. So that's really extreme. We haven't seen an El Nino event like this since 1877. Now, the world was very different then. The climate was very different. It was a cooler climate. It's obviously, we've seen climate change over the last 150 years or so. And we saw famine taking place during that last El Nino event. So tens of millions of people died because crop failure happened across India, across Southeast Asia, and the impact of famine globally. Now, I'm not suggesting that's going to be the case this time around, but in a changing climate, our climate's warmed by 1.5 degrees. This El Nino event will amplify that extra warming even further and make the impacts that we've seen over recent years because of climate change even worse temporarily because of this extreme El Nino event.
We're now well into the hurricane season and things are pretty quiet in the Atlantic right now. Currently, there are no tropical storms or hurricanes, but that is not typically the case this time of year. It was 35 years ago this week that a strong hurricane made landfall here in New England. Hurricane Bob moved through on August 19, 1991. It was a Category 2 hurricane and passed over Block Island. Tropical Storm Irene made landfall on August 28, 2011, bringing with it very heavy rain. All the rain caused the Deerfield River to rise rapidly and led to major flooding. Back in 1985, Hurricane Gloria brought heavy rains and strong, damaging winds. It was a Category 1 hurricane when it hit on September 27th. Hurricane Floyd weakened to a tropical storm when it moved through on September 16th, 1999, causing significant flooding. But one of the most devastating hurricanes in history was the hurricane of 1938. It moved in on September 21st and caused major flooding. It also made a mess of the Big E Fairground.
The Met Office is warning sea temperatures in the central tropical Pacific could rise more than 3 degrees above normal in the coming months. That is far beyond the range of a typical El Nino. That matters.
And also because of the El Nino weather, you got, the bodies of water are starting to heat up because a lot of the starfish are starting to eat the coral reefs. And the coral reefs have the ability to cool off the atmosphere. So because of the El Nino, you have a hydrogen-based atmosphere now. You're looking at a transmutation process. Because like I said, the great majority of these neutrinos, which are basically Holy Ghost particles, is shifting the atmosphere into a fourth omicron-based state, which is fourth octave ether, right? So the coral reefs is what controls the weather as far as to a certain standpoint. It cools off the atmosphere. But the jellyfish, right, which also have, geometric structure ley lines inside their genetics because they have immortalized cell lines. Because if you cut a starfish in half, it'll grow right back. But a lot of these starfish are eating a lot of these coral reef farms inside, the ocean. So that's how you know that nature is fighting back. Nature is, creating some of the calamity in itself as well. It's not only the elites that's, creating all these, the manipulation of the weather. Mother Nature, is causing a reset too at the same time. But you got to be able to, see which one is which by way of discernment.
Because El Nino can shift weather patterns across the globe. Central America, tropical South America, including the Amazon rainforest, and parts of southern Africa and Australia are among the regions at increased risk of drought.
Changing the distribution of where that really warm water is has a big impact on where air rises and where air sinks and how the winds around the world interact and blow in different directions. So the effects of El Nino essentially spread out from the tropical Pacific and can have impacts right around the globe.
We're a long way from the Pacific here in the UK, but the Met Office says the event could increase the chances of wetter, stormier conditions this autumn and early winter, very different from the drought engulfing much of the country now. It is also likely to push up global temperatures. The Met Office says 2027 is very likely to overtake 2024 as the warmest year on record, again temporarily exceeding 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels.
The effects of El Nino won't really be felt in the...
And now this is important to understand because remember, this is all connected to the Golden Gate video that I put out. Because what happens, anytime you speed up in vibration, when the planet heats up, that activates the dynamos. The dynamos are basically, it's like the blood of the planet Earth because it basically stimulates the iron. The dynamos is like the iron, the blood of Earth. Once the planet goes through a transitional shift. So once the planet speeds up in vibration, it's the same thing that takes place when you're talking about the activation of the Kundalini. So heat activates the Kundalini energy, the process of heat, right? So during the time of 2027, you're looking at Mount Shasta in California or whatever. That's the Golden Gate ritual, because like I said, the Golden Gate is a representation of the activation of consciousness. Because the Golden Gate, in order for it to be unlocked, you have to unlock this first. You got to break outside the box. You got to break out of the 64 tetrahedron matrix grid that I was showing you guys on that diagram. So you got to be vibrating. You got to be vibrating extremely high in order to tap into that energy.
The UK until 2027. But if it is as severe as scientists are predicting, it will have a big impact, especially on our wallets.
We can definitely expect to see this putting extra pressure on food prices. It also affects things like animal feed, which are really crucial parts of the production.
Researchers at WaterAid have studied past El Nino events to work out what happens to rainfall when El Nino hits really hard. Their conclusion, this year's event is on track to be the biggest yet.
This year is actually going to be a super El Nino. It means extreme weather patterns. Some countries are going to experience extreme flooding, whereas others are going to experience extreme drought, compounded by climate change.
These dots show the long-term climate trend across major cities. The more red the dot, the drier the city is becoming over time. Dark blue means cities are getting wetter over time. Now look what happens when we drop in these El Nino bubbles. Each one highlights regions most vulnerable to El Nino-driven weather shifts, often turning local weather patterns on their head. And while the UK might fall outside these bubbles, El Nino still matters to us, because every city highlighted on this map also represents something you eat, drink, or wear.
Now this is where we're gonna get into the occult bag. You finna, so if you want to get your notes out for this part, you know what I'm saying, go ahead. But we finna step into the occult bag, of the presentation. So we're gonna get to the screen share and get the likes up, ladies and gentlemen. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button. breaking down esoteric, what they not showing, what they not telling you in the news. We're gonna break all this shit down, right? So that's why, based on the El Nino non-weather, what's taking place when it comes to the ecological humanitarian crisis, stuff taking place in Nepal, FEMA, like I said, they have the continuity of government through the Trump administration, and they're telling you in real time that they put out a disaster declaration between June 1st of 2025 and May 31st of 2027, because 2027 is the year of the GOAT, and the year of the GOAT is the year of initiation, according to Freemasonic symbolism. Now, this is where we get into this. Now, I thought this was very interesting because, right before I went live, I got to pondering, because before I go live, I like to, get my thoughts clear, and I do like, a small little meditation, and I just sit back and try to collect my thoughts and pull information from my subconscious mind, which is also linked to the Akashic Records. So I was doing some meditation, and before I went live, sitting back thinking, Tim Curry is the guy who played Pennywise the Clown. Now, when you get into the hierarchies of the Hermetic Order of the Mystic Shrine, that's connected to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Because when you look at this, it shows you the shrine, and the shrine are the Shriners who run the circus, right? So this is all connected to the principle of Luciferianism. Now, when you also go all the way back to Tim Curry, he played, Pennywise the Clown. And you see the red balloon. Now, for those who've been following me, because like I said, a lot of people watch my videos, they're not going to be able to make this connection or whatever. If y'all see anybody making this connection, y'all know where it came from. Pennywise the Clown. The reason why they're showing you him is because, like I said, a red balloon is a clock with no numbers. They showed you this on the Economist magazine, right? When you're looking at the red balloons, because they're basically telling you that their time is up. We already knew that shit already. We already knew that the 6,000 years was up, but they're telling you in their form of symbolism and by way of necromancy, which is a form of death magic. They're telling you by way of rituals what time it is, right? So the red balloon that's on the Economist magazine is connected to Pennywise the Clown, who's actually played by Tim Curry, who passed away today. Also, Tim Curry, he played the devil in the movie Legend. Now, like I said, this is also symbolic to when you get into Jacob, who was Yakub, and Yakub, he said, I will create a people that will rule over you for 6,000 years, because it's based on the energy of time. So his death symbolizes the fall of the devil, time being up, because the red balloon that's held by Pennywise is a clock with no numbers. So that means that the motherfucking balloon is about to bust. So that means that, like I said, 2027 is the initiation period. I demonstrated that in the last transmission talking about California. So when you see a red balloon is a clock with no numbers. It's a timestamp. So his death is symbolic to something is about to happen. And it's coming from this Economist magazine that they showed you. You can't make this up, ladies and gentlemen. So he played the devil in the movie Legend because his death symbolizes the devil's time is up. The red balloon that Pennywise has represents the fall of the simulation. It's a timestamp. A red balloon is a clock with no numbers. And it's also talking about the fall of, the Luciferian secret societies. Because that's what, the clowns, even when you get into Canaanite culture, when you're talking about the Nephilim or the fallen angels, when they made it with the daughters of men, this is why they propagate a lot of the Canaanite culture in these secret societies, because a lot of the Nephilim, they look like clowns, right? They had the red hair. And the Nephilim, what they do as far as when it comes to the propagation of the system, when you're talking about McDonald's, they what? They eat little people, right? So this is all connected to the reptilian agenda in itself as well, because Pennywise, he didn't just have a clown form, he had a reptilian form when you watch the other parts of the movies, right? So this is all connected. All of it's connected, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the year of the goat. Now, the year of the goat, when you look at the word goat, when you take away the letters G and T, you get OA, because the OA is the Ordo Quale. The Ordo of Quale is the temple sacred astrologists and astronomers. Initiates of this order dedicate their time to study the heavens, right? Now, I showed you what was taking place, right? The heavens. Here, it's talking about the mind, because they know that the great separation is here. For those, this is why I put out my publication, The Sacred Book of the Chosen, because during the time of 2027, which is the year of the great separation, you're going to have those that's going to be connected to heaven mentally, and those that's going to be stuck on the material plane mentally and spiritually on the three-dimensional level. And it's based upon their energy. So that's why I put in the book, you got the chosen ones versus the NPCs. So let me see. Let me go back. Yeah. So it represents the heavens. So the OA interpret the skies of the past, present, and future, aspiring to unite the sciences of the stars as a cohesive duality so that they may guide the faithful along the path of heaven, right? Heaven is the mind. So when you look at the word goat and you take the two N letters off, the beginning letter of G and the T off, you get OA. So the order of Quale is basically the propagation of heaven, right? Which is basically a form of consciousness. This is also connected to the order of the eagle, right? So this is connected to the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn, which is also known as the Hermetic order. Yeah, the Hermetic order, or the Order Templi Astrum. So yeah, and this is all connected to the ancient order of the Mystic Shrine, which is a form of masonry, right? So that's why you got the Trump Towers, and then you still got the veneration of the cube, and then you got the Hiram Abiff sword, right? Which is, like I said, everything is based on lunar energy, because when you look at a katana is really a half moon. So when you look at this half moon, this basically represents the Moor that enslaved the Canaanites, right? So that's why you see a lot of Islamic and Egyptian mythology when you look at Freemasonry, right? So that's why you look at the symbolism of the sword at the Denver airport. And then when you go into coinage, it shows you this Donald Trump coin, which shows you the katana, and the katana is a representation of the moon, lunar magic. And then, like I said, you're looking at the collapse of the ABA, and the ABA, like I said, is the American Bar Association, and the American Bar Association is connected to the British Accreditation Registry. So that basically takes away the credit. Like, what I'm saying is that, you know, if you got a degree in anything or whatever, it don't matter no more. It never did matter. We all know that, but it's one of those things where it doesn't have like credibility now, because everything that was connected to the Crown of England and their curriculum systems or whatever, it was built on fraud, and it was built on indoctrination, and it was built on historical lies. And that's why, you know, the flock cameras or whatever, they also have a contract with FEMA, right? And then you got all this stuff that's taking place with Palantir, and Palantir had a sign hanging up in Gary, Indiana, 6 months before the blackout. So Hegelian dialectic principle. And then we got this going on. Like I said, in order to shift the energy on the planet, you got to go to different energy centers like New York in order to reverse the polarity of what's taking place, you know, metaphysically, spiritually, and, you know, politically, right? We got to shift the frequency, because if you really believe that you one of them chosen ones, that means that you got to band with, you know, like-minded people. And that's why I'm using, you know, my event as a catalyst for, you know, other like-minded individuals to come together. So it's not one of those things where it's not only based on, you know, the event of me speaking and having my book signing. It's also a place for the chosen ones to meet up and network. You know what I'm saying? You want to get with like-minded individuals, because like I said, you know, for those who are living in New York, a lot of you, you know, y'all don't have, you know, family members that live in other places. So you need to be friends with other people who live in different states. That way, when if something happens, you can drop, you know, you can pick up a bag and go somewhere. when shit hit the fan. So that's why it's important, you know what I'm saying, for everybody to unify and network at events like this. And I got the link in the chat. So now we're going to get into some Q&A, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get into some Q&A. Let's get into some Q&A, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's see. What you think of One Piece character King? I've never seen the movie One Piece. My son watches it, but I've never really like paid attention to it. But I'm gonna eventually give it a watch. And thanks for the donation. Let's see. Okay. All right. And first of all, I'm not another charlatan because you got to sell something in order to be a charlatan. I don't come on my platform asking for nothing. I don't sell nothing. I don't sell courses or nothing like that. I just come on here and I demonstrate knowledge and based on certain things that I see in the media, and I draw the conclusions for people. That's what I use my platform for. I don't sell nothing. I don't have no pump and dump currency thing. I don't do none of that shit. So if you want to come on my platform, you know what I'm saying, talking about another charlatan and things of that nature, get the fuck out of here. Y'all, you know what I'm saying? Y'all look for, you know, when it comes to people who talk about, you know, certain information, y'all look for stuff, you know what I'm saying? Y'all just look for shit for no reason because y'all miserable. That's what it means to be chosen. You know what I'm saying? And plus, you know, for those who've been following me for a long time, y'all know I don't bother people. I don't call people out, but it's always people that's coming at me. I don't know why, but, you know, I've been dealing with that energy. When you chosen, you've been dealing with that shit for a very long time. Very long time. You've been dealing with that energy. People just fuck with you for no reason. Create, you know, premeditated, you know, conclusions about you or preconceived notions that, you know, that don't make any sense whatsoever. A charlatan. I don't sell nothing. I ain't even got no merch. I don't even got merch. You know what I'm saying? I ain't got no courses or nothing for you. I just come on here and drop knowledge, bro. So you can take that shit up out of here. Do you think blackouts will happen in the black communities? Yeah, I think so too, because it's another way to create a form of destabilization. And the reason that is because destabilization is the precursor to economic disenfranchisement. So they want to strip away your resources because, like I said, they supplicate your emotions and they transmute it in the form of a weakness. So once they got you so weak to the point where you cannot do for self, that's when you're going to cling on to FEMA and all these other agencies that's connected to the Trump administration. So yes, I think the black communities is going to get hit first, because it's going to be a funnel system, because according to Project Pogo and Project Zypher, that is a extermination program that's predicated upon so-called black people. Right? Yeah, it definitely it means that, you know what I'm saying, but everything is all about perspective, because in many different schools, some people perceive Lucifer to be evil. Some people perceive Lucifer to be an activation of Christ consciousness. Like I said, it's all about perspective. But when you're talking about ontological artifacts, as far as like the Statue of Liberty or whatever, the Statue of Liberty is basically Lucifer. Just do the research. But, you know, but the Lucifer in itself, in other cultures, in fact, when you look at the word Lucifer, some people say, you know, it basically says that it represents the destroyer of the cipher, and the cipher is the pineal gland. So Lucifer is actually they say that it's the destruction of the pineal gland in some cultures. I'm not saying that, but it's all about perspective because many different schools got their own, ideologies, so that's why it's important to study. That's why it's important to understand the science of circumology. That means that you study all different schools of thoughts to get one perspective, right? So that's why it's imperative to get into, like, you should never marginalize yourself when it comes to information. Go into the Bible. You don't never want to be so spiritual to where you don't want to pick up the Bible. There's a lot of codes in there. You don't ever want to be so spiritual to the point where you don't pick up a Quran. There's some codes in there. Go get a Talmud, get a satanic Bible. You got to read all of it, right? If you want to understand what's taking place on the planet and within your genetical faculties, because the great majority of what's taking place inside these books is actually taking place within your neurological chemistry and your genetic, structure. So we're gonna get to some more questions. He says, I'm coming to the event from Cleveland, Ohio. Is one ticket for both events? I think it's two different tickets, I believe. But if it is, if it's one of those things, because we're also going to create a way for where you can pay at the door. So like I said, man, we need all the chosen ones to pull up. And salute to you, Rodney Asbury. So we got, people from Cleveland, Ohio pulling up. So everybody is one of those things, man. It's time to tribe up. It's time to tribe up. Because when it comes to places like Gary, Indiana, and what happened, that is basically the initiation of it. That's the beginning. They're going to roll it out. They're going to do it in increments. They're going to roll everything out in increments. And then out of nowhere, you're going to be like, damn, we live in smart cities now. Because when it comes to, the collapse of the grid, I don't think it's going to happen, in totality. I think it's going to be rolled out in increments. They're going to hit California. They're going to hit this place. They're going to hit this city. And then all of a sudden, your whole society is being controlled by Palantir, which is founded by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, his name is an anagram for the reptile. So that's how you know that we live in a prison planet, right? Because artificial intelligence is being used to extract DNA because the most intrinsic resource in the simulation is human data. So the only way to extract that, form of data or sustenance from humans, you got to create a system of artificial intelligence, right? A biometric system to keep the DNA locked down. Okay. He says, I'm moving to Chicago from Florida. Is Rye a good time to be moving? I mean, yeah, Chicago is a pretty good place. I mean, Chicago, the food is, they got great food there. The weather sucks. And you got to be on the lookout for a lot of people who wear them ski masks. There's a lot of gang activity in Chicago. But when it comes to as far as like an ecological disaster, I believe that Chicago is a safe zone because Chicago is one of the 7 cities that's in alignment with the Big Dipper star constellation. And that basically creates a protectorate, which is why, Chicago has also been one of the places for the hub of consciousness. You got Malcolm X came out of, not Malcolm X, Noble Drew Ali. And then you got, Minister Farrakhan. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where Noble Drew Ali is from, but I believe that he had a temple in Chicago, right? So, yes. Anywhere on the coastlines, Pennsylvania is not safe. Pennsylvania is going to be like all that stuff. I put out a video maybe 2 years ago and I showed y'all the demonstration of the CIA map. Like I said, I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just trying to prepare y'all, right? Even, what I'm saying? All this shit is equated to the Bible. Just like when Noah, when he was talking about the ark. Hey, I'm building this ark because a flood coming. Motherfuckers thought he was, fear mongering and everything, but it turned out to be true based on the story. Now, we all know it's basically metaphorical and symbolic or whatever, but according to, the story in the mythology, it's basically, telling, people that they don't, trust, certain information. And people, like to say that, certain people are fear mongering when really we're just telling you what the hell is going on. So it tells you right here, it says, hey, Beto, where can we see Planet Nibiru? I'm on the East Coast. I don't see it here. So when you break down the etymology of the word Nibiru, you get Nabara. And Nabara interfaces with the Bathari gland. The Bathari gland is where you get your metaphysical abilities from, as far as like a person having alien energy, right? So, because the Bathari gland in itself is what stimulates the electrical chemical sensors in the brain to where it speeds up and activates the vibration of the neurotransmitters in the neural synapses. The neural synapses is what activates the memory bank when you're talking about the Akashic records. So when you're talking about Nibiru's inside of you, right? It's talking about a different space and time. Nabara. Bara in cuneiform language means a different space and time in Nabare. Nibiru, Nabare, Bathari gland. It's basically the same thing. It's talking about a form of neurological activation, mind science technology, right? So that's the thing when it comes to, the spiritual community and the conscious community. I get it. You gotta get out of the mind frame of thinking like a Christian. I know you want to see physical Anunnaki and all these other things, but you got to understand that all this is basically symbolic to the mind and it's symbolic to the activation of the body. Now, yes, these things exist or whatever, but like I said, you can only see 0.005% of the electromagnetic spectrum. So you cannot see these entities because you're in a lower state. So, Nibiru may exist, but you cannot see it. Right? Some people say that they see different suns and stuff like that. I'm not, negating other people's, experiences or whatever, because I've seen, a sun and it looked like it was 2 or 3 suns or whatever. Right? But at the end of the day, don't nobody really know until you out in the motherfucking sky and you really see what's going on. Other than that, just based on the mythology, you just know that everything is based on, the macrocosm being a branch of the microcosm, which is basically the mind and the body. So Nibiru is inside of you, right? All the chosen ones got to link up. Yes, sir. Salute to Bashan Nerling. My body has been healing really fast lately. Every time I get it cut, I heal in 4 days, and plus my hair has been growing rapidly. Yes, because the neutrinos in itself is what stimulates the neuroendocrine transducer. The neuroendocrine transducer is what stimulates the 64 codons in the body. 8 times 8 equals 64. So that means that you got to be vibrating on the interval of 88, because the 88 is the heart and the mind working in unison, which creates the pi equation, 3.14. The 3 represents the mind, 1 represents prana, 4 represents the heart, which is heart chakra activation. So the reason why you've been, healing is because you went through the dark night of the soul, which is basically a portal, right? When you step through that portal, you become Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is basically the epitome of Christ. When you step into your Christ, you become the superhero on the hero's journey, which makes you the chosen one, or Neo, or the Matrix, right? Because that's why Neo, when you look at the word Neo, it's an anagram for the word one, which is the chosen one. So the chosen one is actually a superhero. So what makes you, the superhero in itself is you going through that healing process by way of, the activation of the Christ body. Because like I said, these neutrinos and the activation of the 64 DNA codons is where you tap into X gene activation, right? Immortalized cell lines. You could do the same thing a starfish can do. If you cut a starfish in half, it'll grow right back. I don't know the duration of how long it would grow back, but if you cut a starfish in half, it'll grow right back, right? That is the epitome of immortalized cell lines. And that is what you call sun heat gene activation, because sun heat genes in itself has the ability to stimulate the hair follicle, which is the antenna that connects you to the space-time continuum. So that's why you've been, activating, right? It's the neutrinos. Neutrinos are Holy Ghost particles. Holy Ghost particles activates the 64 codons, the heart and the mind working in unison, the unification process of the endocrine system. So that's why your human circulatory system is speeding up in vibration. That's why a lot of people, the reason why you've been getting a lot, sleepy, that's because the body has to process the codes that's coming from the cosmos. All that gamma radiation, all that El Nino, all that hydrogen-based energy that's in the atmosphere, you're getting sleepy because your body has to rest in order to reap the benefits. It has to be able to translate the codes, right? That's what's taking place. So your hair is growing faster. You know what I'm saying? You're healing a lot quicker. So you're basically going through a hyperbolic chamber from a genetic standpoint. Everybody put hit the lights, you know what I'm saying? Get the lights up so we can get the videos and the algorithm. Would it be a good move to Virginia Island before 2030? I can't help and have a feeling something. No, Virginia is pretty much still on the coastlines. I would say just move inward, right? And like I said, 2030 in itself is based on a new world order, because the agenda for 2030 is basically the new world order with a Gucci belt on. That's all it is. The agenda for 2030 is the new world order with a Gucci belt on. So, especially, I showed you in the FEMA document, it said that, by May 31st of 2027, that, there's going to be some type of, you have to have this declaration. So in that document, in so many words, you need to move inland before 2027 of May 31st. That's what I got when I read that. So Virginia is still pretty much on the coastlines, DMV area. For those who can't move on our own to the Midwest, let's link up to the event. Yes, link up. That's what you got to tribe up. Get each other's number. You get each other's number. It's one of those things where motherfuckers got to get out of their ego, because the ego is what keeps you connected to the demiurge. The ego is the epitome of hell, right? So that's why I said a lot of people cannot save themselves, because, like I said, some people, they feel like they too good to ask for help. Especially, you got some people who live in New York be like, I'm from New York. I don't need no help. I'm from Brooklyn. I don't need no help. I'm staying out here hard body. They ain't gonna go nowhere. They're gonna stay there and when the flood hits. You know what I'm saying? Because they are just, integrated in that area. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be in your ego so much to where you have an emotional connection to something to where it's going to keep you stuck there. That's stagnant energy. Over emotionalism is what creates stagnant energy, right? So don't be mentally stagnant so much to the point where you stay stuck in your ego and then something happens. You don't want to do that. So get out of your ego. If you need some help, say something. Heavens and the earth elevations, detoxing out of any toxic people, places, the elevation, heavens. Yes, that's why I said the great purification is conflagration in the Bible. Conflagration in the Bible is basically talking about purifying the earth. Anything that's basically parasitical to the planet has to go, right? That's why I said the demo system of democracy was parasitic, because it operated by way of fraud. That's why you're looking at the collapse of the Crown of England that's connected to the American Bar Association. All this shit got to go, right? That's why the clown, Tim Curry, when he died, his death is symbolic to, the clown, which is it, who holds the red balloon. A red balloon is a clock with no numbers. The red balloon is on the Economist magazine. And he played the devil in Legend. So that means that the devil's time is up. That's what it's basically talking about. New heaven, new earth. It's telling you symbolically through the secret societies with the St. Agatha ritual, with the skull inside the head. The devil's time is up because you are activating mentally. God is the mind. It's not a motherfucker that you're looking for. It's not the Anunnaki. You got to become the Anunnaki. Right? It's kind of like the same concept when you watch the movie The Last Dragon. Bruce Leroy was going through his hero's journey. He was so adamant about finding the master. Like, who's the master? Who the fuck is this master? I'm on this journey. I'm looking for the master. So he goes through his journey, going through all throughout New York, looking for somebody that doesn't exist. Come to find out, he goes to the Some Dumb Goy, which is a fortune cookie factory. He comes to find out that the master was a motherfucking machine. And then, as he went through his hero's journey, once he, came across that affliction in that reality, he went through that self-realization portal, because self-realization is what leads you to the Christ, which is the spirit of Melchizedek, which is why he was able to cultivate the glow, right? He was able to activate the golden light body. That's what the golden age is all about. See, the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn is really trying to mimic the energy of the chosen ones. They can't activate the Christ body. They can't become that Bruce Leroy who got that motherfucking glow, because they have cursed genetics. So this is why they create secret societies to mimic that, right? They're telling you by way of rituals and symbolism what time it is, but they got to tell you. They tell you in the form of symbolism, and they only do it through symbolism in secret societies is because they don't have the DNA to do it, right? They ain't got the DNA. And when I'm talking about the DNA, I'm talking about the Canaanites, those who have the Microbacterium leprae, which is a form of cursed genetics, recessive genetical traits. So, and that's another thing. But there's a lot of stuff that I got coming up. I ain't gonna say nothing about it. Because outside of my event, I got some other things that's coming up. But I'm gonna just be on the hush hush for that for now. Salute to everybody in the chat. Okay, we're gonna get into some more questions. Okay. Okay. What can my girlfriend do if she has the jab or it doesn't affect the chosen ones? Now, what you can do, this is just my opinion. I don't think you're chosen if you went and got the jab, because like I said, what makes you chosen is you having a pure vessel. That way that, your body is able to interface with solar transmission, because the nanotechnology and the microplastics that's inside the deep state dosage is what cuts off the electrical transmission, because polymer blocks solar transmission. So what she's got to do is she need to take some chlorophyll, because chlorophyll becomes a grabber when it comes to nanometals and a lot of nanotechnology. So she need to get into some chlorophyll and some detox juices. Detox, fasting. Salute to everybody in the chat. Salute to you. Okay, we'll do this. Is ATL inland enough? Yes, ATL is actually, a hub when it comes to. All right, there's this movie you got to watch. It's called Cyborg. There's a movie you got to watch called Cyborg, and the main character is Jean-Claude Van Damme. Now, in that movie, it came out in the 80s, because a lot of the 80s movies, they tell you a lot of the truth when it comes to the so-called apocalypse. Now, in the movie, Jean-Claude Van Damme, he's going through this journey because it's basically like a post-apocalyptic scenery, and you living in a time where you have cyborgs. So it's basically like a cybernetic dystopia. And in the movie, the journey is for him to get to Atlanta, because Atlanta is basically like the homeland of where they got of what they call the hereafter, or what they call a new heaven or a new earth. New heaven, new earth is in Atlanta in the movie Cyborg with Jean-Claude Van Damme. So you got to watch that movie. And the reason why he was trying to get to Atlanta is because they had the vac, not the vac or whatever. They had the cure. They had a cure for something in Atlanta. Now, that's funny because Stone Mountain, which is also connected to Atlanta, Stone Mountain is the heart of Quetzalcoatl. So this means that this is the land of Tahuti. So that means that Atlanta in itself is going to be protected. And plus Atlanta is on the 33rd parallel. So that Atlanta is an energy center. It's an energy center of consciousness. So you good in Atlanta. That's why the devil want to, gentrify it so much. Try to move you out, trick you out your spot. Okay, I got one. Any significance to having wisdom teeth? Yes, there's a reason why they call them wisdom teeth, because your wisdom teeth has a lot of stem cells. And the stem cells in itself has the ability to manipulate the electrical energy of the fascia system, which cultivates the nervous system. That's why certain teeth or whatever, they're connected to certain organs, because your teeth is the circuit breakers to the body, right? So a lot of your teeth or whatever, it's basically it stimulates the electrical transmission of the body. It's connected to your fascia system. So your wisdom teeth, there's a reason why they call it wisdom, because it has a lot of stem cells, right? You get a lot of knowledge from your wisdom tooth. So do not take out your wisdom teeth. If you ever notice, all of a sudden you get one tooth taken out, and then all of a sudden you got back problems all of a sudden, or you old and you get, another tooth taken out, and that tooth is connected to your kidneys and other parts of your body and your organs or whatever. Like I said, the teeth are the electrical circuit breakers to the body. So don't take your wisdom teeth out. If you can, keep them bitches in there as long as possible. So salute to everybody in the chat. Y'all asking some good questions tonight. B-Dale, I've been following you since Twitter. When you did those car videos, are there any benefits to wearing gold? Yes, gold is what stimulates the electrical energy of your aura. So when you get into the periodic tables of elements, when you look at the nomenclature title of gold, it shows you AU, right? Because gold in itself is an extension of your aura. And your aura is the cultivation of the golden light body, which is also connected to Bruce Leroy, because that's why he was able to tap into his power. You know what I'm saying? He became the Christ. So that when you become the Christ, that creates the gold elixir all around the body. You go from lead to gold. So gold in itself is what, creates the stimulation of the aura. It brings out your aura even more. It creates that glow. So gold is also one of those things where, it has a lot of piezoelectrical components. And plus, especially during the time of the ancient times, if you watch some of the old Bruce Lee movies in the 80s, you will see some of the old Chinese men in the crowd. If you're paying attention, you'll see some of them wearing gold teeth. This is like in the 60s and the 70s, and you see some Chinese men. If you watch like some of the older Bruce Lee movies, and you look at some of the characters in the background, you see some of them wearing gold teeth. Because like I said, gold teeth is another way to create a form of manifestation, because gold has an octave vibration that stimulates the ruffles that hits the top of the mouth up here. Those ruffles, gold has the ability to interface with that. That's why, a lot of the ancestors, we used to, wear gold teeth. We used to wear a lot of, gold teeth, because gold is a component that has the ability to make ether travel on 0-point energy fields. So if you got a mouthful of gold and you're trying to speak and bring about certain manifestations, that vibration is going to interface with those 0-point energy fields. And that's when you get the materialization of your manifestation, right? Because gold is basically the epitome of creation, right? When God said, let there be light. So gold is very intrinsic. Gold is one of those things where, like I said, it stimulates your aura. Plus, like I said, it's another way to activate that melanin too. That melanin As far as like that's why, especially during the times of antiquity, you know, a lot of the kings and the queens, we used to wear a gold crown, right? Because like I said, gold in itself has the ability to stimulate the what's it called? Yeah, the neuromelanin. And the neuromelanin is the brain and central nervous system melanin, right? Gold is what creates that ability. That's why we used to wear the crown called Kether. Because even when you look at a gold crown, the crown is basically the epitome of a mothership. When you look at a mothership or whatever, it's basically the symbology of a crown. And the crown is talking about mind science, technology, mental activation. That's how you become God. Excuse me. You see. I've been feeling like Superman ever since the solar eclipse on April 8th. Often have visions of saving the world. Superman was created in my city. Because one thing you got to understand about the April 8th solar eclipse, a solar eclipse is basically a Christ energy, right? It represents Ophiuchus, and Ophiuchus is Jesus walking on water. So for you to feel like you're Superman, a Superman in itself, there's a reason why he got the S logo on his chest inside of a pyramid, because it represents Kundalini activation. Because the whole archetype of Superman, he represents who? He represents the Christ, right? Because that's what Apep is. Apep is Apophis. Apophis is a representation of a serpent, which represents the double eight, which is the golden dime, where human becomes God in the golden age. When you become a God, you literally become a superhero, right? That's why when you look at the garments of Superman, when you look at the colorology of it, he got red on, he got blue on, he got yellow on, because those garments have to interface with the trinary star system in Elihum, which is Utu, Apsu, and Shamish. That's the yellow sun, the red sun, and the blue sun, which is the red star Kachina and the blue star Kachina interfacing with the yellow sun that's inside our reality. So that creates a tachyon. So when you talk about superheroes and stuff like that, you actually become that, right? But I'm not gonna put a timestamp on that, like saying that we motherfuckers gonna get their powers next year or whatever. It may be one of those things where you may not see that reality, what I'm saying, for another 50 years if we have that much time left. You know what I'm saying? But metaphysically speaking, when you get into the CIA documentation, they've been speaking about people having metaphysical abilities for years. This is why they inject PCP inside the hippocampus layer of the brain, because it's stagnates car. Like, just imagine your car not getting the oil change for like 3 years. That's what they do when you inject PCP inside the hippocampus layer of the brain. That's what happens when you eat genetically modified foods from the Food and Drug Administration and you got all these microplastics inside the food. So what happens is that, it basically clogs up the Bathory gland. That's why you're not able to activate certain abilities. Your Bathory gland is being clogged up from all the microplastics and all this stuff that's coming from the food and recreational drugs and stuff like that. So we do have these abilities. Yes, we do. But like I said, it's also one of those things where people are neurologically confined to certain ideologies. Put it like this: if you're in religion, you're not finna get no fucking powers, right? Because just think of the Anunnaki. Like, it's just common sense, bro. Like, if you're an Anunnaki being and you come into the planet, you're not finna subscribe to no religion, because you know that the religion is the very reason why it took you outside of your power. So for people thinking that they're gonna get some type of abilities or whatever, because that's like an indirect way of saying that you got the God gene. People who are stuck in religion are indirectly saying that they got the God gene activated, and the God gene is the VMAT2 gene, which is the vesicular monomod transporter 2 gene. That means that you worship things outside of yourself. right? So anybody that's stuck in religion, you're not finna get telepathy, psychometry, and clairvoyance. You're not finna tap into none of that because you don't believe in yourself, because you believe in an outside force, you know what I'm saying, to do it for you. That's why you're not finna tap into the Christ. That's what people gotta understand. Belief systems is what cuts off your abilities. That's what the firmament is basically a representation. The firmament is the symbology of a spiritual cutoff. So anytime anytime you join a religion, a secret society, a fraternity, or anything that's connected to this corporate apparatus, you're basically capping yourself. You're putting a mental cap. You're marginalizing yourself. That's a spiritual cutoff. You're boxing yourself in. So, like I said, if you're boxed in, you're not finna have no Superman or superhuman abilities. You know what I'm saying? If I was the case, you know what I'm saying, when Superman came to the motherfucking planet, he would have been a Christian. Why wasn't he a Christian in the movies? Because like I said, the religion is the very thing that takes you away from your power. Because you don't believe in yourself no more. How you gonna be, what I'm saying? How you gonna believe in Jesus and expect to fly? Make that make sense. Okay. So we're gonna get to some more questions. We're gonna get into a couple more questions, and we're gonna end the live. And salute to everybody in the chat, man, because these videos are important. Because salute to the lady. I don't know if you're watching. Salute to you, beloved. Because she watched my videos, that is why she had a generator and she was prepared for the blackout in Gary. So salute to her. So it's one of those things where you gotta plant seeds. You gotta use your platform to plant seeds, because some people, they create this ideology that I'm fear mongering and all this other stuff. No, I'm just trying to help. I'm just showing you what's taking place inside my head and what's taking place in my world. You know what I'm saying? Because everything is all about perspective. You know what I'm saying? Okay. You can put some questions in here. Ever Christian believe in Jesus? I don't know about that one. Yeah, the movie Cyborg is a classic. And it's actually, it mirrors the timeline that we're actually on, because, it's basically the epitome of technocratic sorcery, because that's when you have, the merging of humans and robots. And, and thinking about the movie, I think he was one of the only original humans that was on the planet, Jean-Claude Van Damme, which is why he had the authenticity to fight himself out of certain situations in the movie. And I believe you can probably find that movie on Tubi somewhere. These are the type of movies I grew up watching. Like this is the movies, the type of movies that I like. I like old Bruce Lee movies, 60s, 70s. I like Abbott and Costello, slapstick comedy, Charlie Chaplin. Because like I said, if you understand slapstick comedy, you will be able to understand what's taking place in government. Because both of those things are basically interchangeable. Because a lot of slapstick comedy that creates the ability to understand, symbolism. Because in slapstick comedy, nobody's talking. Everything is based on theatrics. So I like movies like that. The movies like Toxic Avenger is a cult classic. Goonies. I watch a lot of old movies. I watch old 80s movies. And the movies that got the bad acting, the old 80s classic movies, those are the movies that got the most information in it. Watch movies like Hellraiser. Watch, Tales from the Crypt. I watch shit like that. There's the Night of the Living Dead. I watch like old ass movies. I'm like an old ass man. That's the type of stuff that I watch. But that's the stuff that you got to tap into, because in the older movies, That's when everybody was asleep. That's when all of our parents during that time. That's why I said the older movies is where you're going to get the information from, because that's why our parents failed. They was going to the movies. They viewed it as entertainment. They missed the message. So that's why I go back and watch all that shit. And plus, my dad is a movie nerd. So I grew up watching some crazy ass shit like the movie Killer Clowns, right? Specifically, the movie Killer Clowns came out in the year of 1988. And since we speaking of the Golden Dawn represents the number 88. And the movie is predicated upon these aliens who are clowns that's connected to the ancient order of the Mystic Shrine, right? And these aliens come from outer space. Because, like I said, the clowns is basically a representation of the Nephilim, the ones who made it with the daughters of men, who are the Canaanite. And they had red hair like a clown, and they eat babies like, oh, I didn't mean to say that. They eat the little people like a clown, but you know what I'm saying. But I watch movies like that. I watch old ass movies. Old movies is where you're gonna get like the movie like Ewok Adventures, the old 80s Star Wars movies, Ewok Adventures, all types of stuff. Labyrinth, you know what I'm saying? What else? Yeah, Pan's Labyrinth. Watch it's another movie that I like. Oh no, I watch a lot of old stuff, man. You just gotta, it's one of those things. If you want to understand what's taking place, watch them old movies. 70s and 80s. Also early some of the 90s movies, they got a lot of classics in those too. Okay, we're gonna get into couple more questions. And new to the channel, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. And if you're new to this channel, I also have a book out. It's on Amazon. It's called The Sacred Book of the Chosen. Everything that's taking place in real time. I talk about some of this stuff inside my book. And the book is not only based on, the collapse of the three-dimensional world. It's actually talking about, mental health. So it's one of those things where I try to, prepare people for what is to come psychologically inside the book as well. So it's not just based on prophetic divination. It's actually talking about inner transformation. Because as you have the collapse of the material world, you have to resurrect the Christ. I'm not sure what Target is trying to do, but I know that it's basically a mimicking of energy when it comes to racism. I forgot what that it's an illustration that came out like in the early 1950s or 40s or whatever, and they had a little boy standing looking like just like the illustration. Okay, I'm gonna one more question. I'm out of here. When will the sleeping giants petrified be waking up? Now, just like I said, just based on my own independent research, light in itself is solar transmission, and solar transmission is the epitome of supreme mathematics, because light is nothing but frozen geometry. And mathematics have the ability to manipulate everything that's connected to the material plane. So when you have this light energy that's coming to the planet, it's going to stimulate the internal vibrations of Mother Nature. So a lot of these petrified giants and is connected to the four basic elements. But the only thing that can basically wake up that energy is ether. Ether is the fifth element. And once ether interfaces with earth, air, water, and fire, that's when, you get the activation of the Orishas, Mami Wata and things of that nature. So this is where, these non-corporeal spirits that's interfacing with nature, they start to resurrect themselves to where you start to see petrified giants walking around and stuff like that, or trees just, getting up and moving and animals talking. That's a real thing, right? Because like I said, Light is intelligence, and intelligence is mathematics, and mathematics is mother, and mother is dark matter energy, which is chaos energy, which is connected to a form of creation. So creation has the ability to wake up certain things. So I agree, yes. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching this video. The link for the event is in the chat, pinned up. The link for my book, the link in my book is going to be in the description, but you can get it on Amazon, The Sacred Book of the Chosen. And thanks for watching this video. End of transmission.
I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. Karma's gonna get to you, and then you'll have a chariot with only one less friend. Now I had distant folks that are looking to my eyes to understand the wisdom he's given and his wealth from the skies. So thanks for this meal that I'm about to receive, and thank you for my health and all the good memories. Thanks for the courage taking on another day, when I used to not believe, but now I know about grace. Stay away from the fire, cause the flames does burn. Go with your gut feeling, when it's wrong you learn. For every one step I take, the Lord takes two. And do unto others if you want it done unto you. It's me again, God, I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. It's me again, God, I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. This a completion, the selfish Proto-Grecian, Amerindian, Phoenician. I'm the last of the Mohicans, the bastard of the land, the pen, melanin, accretion. And we just trying to get back to the fact that we was kings and queens of a land before the avalanche seized it. I live on Turtle Island with the rest of the diseased. Better than the medicine for 7 different treatments. You try to ride away but end up getting seasick. The sleep can feel my words like Braille, and they're awakened with the penmanship of Hindu script written in them vacant monastery honorary payments to the prototype. Tomorrow's only a day away, but nothing happens overnight. The fuck's wrong with going left when you know it's right? Biting off more than I can chew, that's an overbite. Black on black crime is like watching 2 soldiers fight when all along they was on the same page. History. It's me again, God, I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. It's me again, God, I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land.